We are back with the Sales Samurai. Who is the Sales Samurai? She is Lindsey the Beast Buxman. Not a real middle name, but I'm trying to work on it for her. Trying to make that her middle name. You are a sales professional. Mm-hmm. You have been going to Necker Island numerous times, and you're in your early 20s. You're an absolute monster. Is that valid to say?
Valid to say.
You crushed the game.
All truth so far.
Yeah. She crushes the game. And we're on quarantine. This is an actual watch, and this is a tracking bracelet. So we can't really leave this house. So we decided, let's make some use of our time, and let me learn from her. All right, Lindsey. How do people get into sales jobs, roles, or positions similar to yours where they can make absolute, as the kids say, bank?
So I can give my path into it, which wasn't a traditional path either.
Okay.
I don't think anyone follows a traditional path into sales, so I'll share mine, share some other tips, and then we'll see where it goes.
Perfect.
So I left college after my sophomore year and moved to New York. So I was going to school in Colorado. I moved to New York to apprentice for a CEO of a startup company and learn from him. So I was making $25,000 a year, which is not much money in New York. Finding housing in Manhattan was a challenge, but we did it. And so was working in New York City. About 3 months into that apprenticeship with the CEO, he left the company. So I had this like golden opportunity where the company was in this chaos, and just there were a lot of employees leaving. There was not a known direction of the company, and there was a transition period into that next very mature CEO that we got. But you lost a lot of employees because they all signed up to work for that CEO. So when that happened, there was an opportunity for me as a 19-year-old to say, hey, looks like we've only got 2 account managers left. We have 40 accounts. Can I manage a few of those? And so I raised my hand. They said, yeah, we don't have any other options. And I was managing Pepsi, Tom's Shoes, and probably a handful of others just as their account manager. But yep. I was also getting myself into the room through strategy and strategic thought about how to, in my case, it was how to develop successful loyalty programs. And so I came up with this really cool points economy that essentially establishes how many points can someone earn, how many points can someone burn, and like what should that look like, how can that fit into a company's economics, and it added a lot of value. And so it became something where there was no question about whether or not I should have a call with, let's say, Pepsi's CMO or Tom's CMO, because I was the only person who was qualified to have the call. And so there was no question that they put 19-year-old Lindsey into those rooms. It got me into all of the rooms I needed to be in as far as getting to know clients, getting that exposure, starting to become an expert in what I was doing, and it opened up a lot of doors. So then I had a few other kind of job transitions, but same company, different roles, so role transitions, but I moved into really supporting our sales team and being the strategic thought partner, or like really kind of like a sales engineer, but for strategy for all of our reps.
Okay, I'm gonna pause you there for a
yes.
second. So I want you to go back to when you mentioned you created the earn and burn.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit more about that, because that's really where the transition happens. That's where things go from malaise and normal to magical. At that exact moment.
Points economy did do that, and points economy was so much fun. It was that, and then quarterly business reviews. Those were the 2 things that got me into every meeting.
Yeah. So how'd you come up with those ideas, or those thoughts, or those procedures?
So my chief revenue officer at the time, he came up with the points economy, but he created it in a very like stagnant, you have to recreate it every time for every brand way. I went to my CEO at the time and said, I think I can like operationalize this, make it a whole lot faster, and created this beautiful Excel model just because I either knew Excel, I knew some of it, but I also knew how to Google really well. And by Googling, the formulas you need, really thinking about what a client would ask for, and I continued to build out that model for years. But it was getting to know what works in loyalty, kind of what insights we need to pull into this, and then gradually replying to questions as they came in and putting it into the economy. The first kind of guinea pig for this new economy was probably the UFC. because we did a loyalty program for them back in the day. It wasn't the best economy I've ever created. The later ones were, but it was still something that, unless you were pulling our chief revenue officer into every meeting, and at some point I surpassed him in knowledge too, but it was you'd pull in Lindsey because she could get in the weeds, she could do the models, and it really came down to Google.
Well, that's intriguing because as I'm listening to this, the question in the episode is really based on how do young professionals get into these roles and into these positions. What most salespeople do is they go, how can I sell more? If I sell more, my company does better. That's not what you did. You did something very intriguing. You said, how can I make my company better? Therefore, they'll sell more. Mm-hmm. So you were kind of doing an inside-out approach, you were selling your company on yourself. It's genius.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, around the same time, I had gone to my original CEO, so probably just before all of this transformation into doing a lot of client work. But I'd gone to my CEO and I said, hey, can I start taking cold calls? I want to be an SDR. And he said, no, that's way too important to our business.
SDR is?
Sales development rep or business development rep. Yeah. So BDR, SDR. And so they're typically right out of college roles when you do that. But little 19-year-old Lindsey with no experience wasn't capable of taking those calls to my old CEO's perspective, which is fine. It's fair. It's valid. But it was okay, that's not the path I can go down. Whereas most kind of sales reps work their way up, or the stories you work your way up from SDR to account executive. I wasn't allowed to. I was told no to doing that. Mm-hmm. I still asked the question. I still tried to do it, but I had to find other ways.
And you got punched in the face figuratively. Didn't happen.
It was a little insulting. Yeah. I was I feel like I could do that.
But that role is too important for a young woman. So let's not do that.
Yeah, I didn't get to do it. So I had to find other ways. And it was points economies and then business reviews, just being able to read data as well. It was the skill set that my company didn't have at the time, so I could pull that in and give that to them. It really comes down to finding what's unique to your capabilities and where you can put in the effort and hustle and just help even the current client success directors do their jobs better. Yeah. It got me into a lot of rooms.
Huge. Huge. Okay, so now we go back to the transition of your sales roles.
Yeah, so then I moved over into a sales support role where I was doing strategy. I was really thinking about how can we design a program vision that sells our deals? How do we reply to a request for proposal and give the right vision for that program? So it was kind of a fluffy role, as you will, but what it did was it got me into literally every sales call that we had. Maybe not a couple of the intro calls, but beyond that, I was always in the room. We had 5 sales reps at the time, and I was supporting all of them. So I was writing proposals next to them. I was creating the decks. I was planning for the meetings, and I was in the meetings. And so I'd like to liken it to having about maybe 5 years of sales experience in 1 year because of being in all those rooms.
Sure.
So that was key to getting prepared. But it's because I was an expert in what I was doing that I was allowed to be in those rooms. So the expertise in being that subject matter expert, knowing the most about it, and knowing that I could add value in the room, first thing. Then I needed to understand sales and really do sales. The transition point to actually becoming an AE, there became a point.
AE is?
Account executive. Yeah. So the transition point, I was supporting a deal and I did all the work on it. Our sales rep never met the person, never met the client in person. I did all of the sales work. He wasn't even joining our sales calls. And so I turned to my CEO and I said, hey, I think I can do that job. I think that I can do what he does and bring in deals just like that. So it took kind of winning the only deal of the quarter for my company, not taking credit for that, not demanding commission or demanding that I'm recognized for it, but saying, hey, if I did that and I was really kind of the face of that deal, give me a bag and let me show that I can do this as well. And so he was happy to do so because he wanted a young, ambitious sales rep who did know how to close deals and had just done it. And it gave me a chance to fight for my life and meet my quota.
Would you say that Google helped you become a subject matter expert?
Yes, 100%. There's so much about loyalty programs on Google, but it also, so like I sold loyalty programs. I went and signed up for every loyalty program that I could find. And as a consumer, you are interacting with that every single day. And so just being aware and understanding your surroundings and thinking through how Starbucks does it, how TJ Maxx does it, you have to know.
The sales samurai, people, here she is doing it.
Yeah.
Because that's, again, learning about what it is that you are selling. Mm-hmm. I keep going back to car sales, but I don't know why. I've never sold a vehicle.
I would not sell cars well. I'd be like, the steering wheel is heated. You should buy this.
Well, again, that's a very interesting point. You should know a lot about what you're selling, and you should like what you're selling. Why do you like loyalty programs?
I've always kind of been a marketing nerd. There was a time, I think I was like 8 years old, but I was in the mall with my mom. We'd go up to Denver and shop because I grew up in like a small town in Colorado. And I saw Anthropologie's window displays. And I was like, oh my God, people go in there because of the window displays. And that's marketing. And I just became fascinated with what window displays were like. Then it kind of transformed into being fascinated with every catalog that I got or every ad that I saw, starting to understand and think through all the experiences in stores. And so I just, throughout my childhood and then early adulthood, I was always shopping and always exploring while I shopped. And it allowed me to be an expert. Like, I knew about all these loyalty programs because I had already been learning about them. Though, when I first interviewed to join this company, this loyalty program company, I had no idea what they did. I was like, I know you do data and people, and I love that. I want to be a part of something that has data and people, but I don't know what you actually do.
Sure.
Because I didn't know there was technology or companies behind those experiences. And so that was the piece I was missing to know this was my calling. But I didn't know that existed. So I had to figure that out along the way.
Again, a lot of times that's what we do, not only in life, but in all aspects of life, is we go, okay, I kind of like this thing, but I don't really know how to go get it. And so you have to make a few stumbling blocks. You have to make a few errors along the way. You have to run into a few walls.
Yeah, my wall was working on a satellite, and I took the night shift every night to go and talk to this satellite. 2 a.m., waiting for the satellite to pass. It'll beep at you for about a minute, so it would beep and just have 3 lights that turned on, and then that was my entire night. And I was sitting alone in this kind of like space station, as you will, and just so bored. I was like, this can't be my calling. This isn't me. So then I knew I needed to find some people, not just data. It was rough.
Waiting for a satellite to pass.
You have no idea how boring that is.
I can imagine.
It sounds like such a fun, sexy, cool job. The satellite was cool. Not my thing.
I can imagine. That sounds like just seeing how much mayonnaise you can consume in a day. Sounds like the same thing. How much mayonnaise can you eat today? Yeah. Well, because that's similar to what happened to me. I knew I liked comedy.
Yes.
I knew I liked being on radio.
Yes.
I knew that I loved the stock market. I had no idea how to blend those together.
And you've done it so perfectly, but you've hit a lot of walls along the way.
Absolutely.
It's been like, wow, that was bad.
Yeah, there was a few times on stage where I thought I was going to be a professional comedian. This is how I'm going to make money.
How did that go? How much money did you make as a professional comedian?
$800.
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
And then I imagine you put it into a stock and it's now $100,000 today. No, just kidding.
Yeah, that'd be a cool story.
It would be.
No, I think I just spent it on like hotel rooms because one of my first professional gigs was in Seattle.
Yeah.
And at the time I lived in Florida. So I had to fly to Seattle and do a gig, which I got like $125 for. I just didn't do the math right. It wasn't great. But I wanted to be on stage.
Yeah, you have to pay for it.
Sometimes you got to pay for it up front.
Yeah, 100%. It's okay to not be earning big time.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode is specifically how you became so good at selling person to person and when those 6-figure deals started coming in.
Sounds good.
We will see you in episode 3 with the Sales Samurai.